Guys and girls, thought I'd just do a real quick video just to highlight what I believe, and when I'm training people to parakite from paragliding, three like golden rules, if you like, for how to possibly avoid some of the obvious injuries. Parakiting is obviously getting more and more popular. It's only going to hopefully continue to get more popular. It should. It's a great sport. It's a great way to stay current. For paragliders and for non-paragliders, it's a fantastic way to enjoy flying. But inevitably, with its growth, you're going to get to a point, as you do with a lot of sports, where the sport is growing faster than the knowledge is spreading. And with that comes some really avoidable injuries. So in some of our local sites, we've had a few injuries recently, all of which are avoidable. And not necessarily by these points, but for me, I anticipate that over the next couple of years, there's inevitably going to be quite a few injuries and possibly worse in the parakiting world. And I envision that a bunch of these are likely to fall within these three different mistakes. So hopefully, if as many of us can avoid making these mistakes as possible, that would be great. Now, by no means are these the only three mistakes that people will make, or three learning points. There are going to be plenty of golden rules out there, and depending on your sites and the style of flying that you're doing, it's always going to vary. But for my area and the people that I'm helping, I believe these three are probably the most crucial. So starting with the first one, and this is quite specific really for paragliders. Paragliders are very used to flying reverse, so they'll reverse launch, and they're used to trying to ground handle their wing completely reversed over their heads. They switch facing back towards their wing with the wing over their head and controlling it that way. Now, when you're flying dunes, which we have a lot of in the southwest of the UK, there's a couple of things that are really important to understand and work with, and that makes it very different to paragliding. Your lift band is much more narrow than you're going to be used to with paragliding. With paragliding, obviously, much higher, bigger hills. And with that comes a much bigger lift band. So you're going to be working with a much smaller lift band and a lot more proximity to the ground. So those two things come together to hopefully prick your ears up and make you concentrate a little bit more, because if you fall out of the lift band and you're in proximity to the ground and you're flying an accelerated wing, high performance wings, all parakites are pretty high performance, then you've got to have your wits about you. So what I see a lot of the time is people flying with a reverse launch style, trying to walk up the dune, and it's a small compressed lift band that they'll go into, and they'll get plucked up. And when they get plucked, they're reversed and they're kicking and trying to switch. And if the wind is slightly off, it can be exaggerated and made worse, because they might be pushed and start flying downwind, be on a downwind leg with a high performance wing with less control because they're twisted. The simple error here is not to fly, or not to use that ground handling method of being completely switched. Use the Cobra. It's really important to learn to fly your wing asymmetrically. You can see it as it's not a full Cobra or nothing. You can work, there's different levels of asymmetric really, or that would take you all the way back around to your traditional reverse launch. But really try and get used to, for my students, before their feet leave the floor, I'll always try and make sure that I get them really confident with Cobra launch, and then tip touches, so taking the wing down either side. And once they're confident taking the wing down either side, take it down to one side and then walk back with the wind, with it in an asymmetric format, so that the wing is off to the side. If you do this for your launch, so if you had it off to the side, you walk up the dune with it off to its side, and you've got your wing pointing into wind, then as you launch, you're launching completely untwisted. If you get plucked, you'll be flying into wind, into the slower direction if there's a bit of a crosswind. But essentially, you massively reduce the chance of being plucked and being plucked with twists, which with low proximity and a small lift band are terrible things. So what you'll really often see, and I see all the time, is people reverse launching on the beach, walking towards the dune. They don't have any, they can't keep the wing up when they get to the base of the dune. This is because of compression. Then they walk up the dune, reverse launch it, and it's a small and strong lift band. They get plucked, and hopefully, if this does happen to them, by the time they kick round, they've flown out the lift band and they do the right thing and just come down and land. But you see that a lot of the time, people desperately trying to launch and they're just struggling, going up and down the dune, and they just keep flying in a straight line because they're trying to get out of the twist, and landing on the ground. If they get desperate and they start trying to tuck into the lift band, but when they haven't got control, then again, you've got the low proximity that could possibly come and bite you. The solution to this is to learn to control your wing and walk with your wing in an asymmetric format as you walk up the dune. Okay, so that's the first way to save yourself hassle, get flying sooner, and reduce the chance of injury. The second one is when people are flying along the dune, making their first beat, let's say, so they're flying along a small ridge or a dune, and again, small lift band. When they come to make their turn, they'll hopefully try and be fairly cautious and do a fairly flat turn. But if they just fly in a straight line and then make the turn, because of the narrow lift band, it's a small dune and proximity to the ground, they'll fly out of the lift band, and then if they continue the turn, they might find themselves too low to the ground, and at one point coming back towards the dune, obviously, or back towards the hill, and they're now going downwind on a high performance wing that they're not used to, which can be fully accelerated, and they're out of lift. And as you can imagine, then you can end up putting in a hook turn and coming into the ground. To give yourself more space to be able to make your turn without leaving the lift band, that's what you want to try and do there. Anticipate. So long before you make your turn, anticipate when and where you want to make your turn, and try and start climbing the dune a little bit. So fly towards the back of the lift band. Now, an obvious caveat there, especially if you've got a relatively shallow dune or shallow hill, is in stronger conditions, you've got to be really careful not to get pinned. So there's always going to be caveats and things you need to consider. But in general, if you can, when you're flying along, don't just fly in a straight line and then make a turn, make like a P-turn. So start pulling yourself up the hill and climb and get a little bit of height and get a bit further back in the lift band. So then you can use the whole of the lift band for your turn, and hopefully you don't leave the lift band at all. You don't lose any altitude as you're making your turn. You can make a nice, safe turn to turn back. So that's the second golden rule. The third and most important one that I really think is the one that catches people out. It's a really tricky one, and I find myself slipping into it sometimes still. Is quite specific to when there is a crosswind. So when there's a crosswind, you're going to have a downwind leg and an upwind leg. Now, typically, obviously, the downwind leg is going to be a lot faster than the upwind leg. And what you see is people flying a downwind leg and getting confused between ground speed and airspeed. Now, when you're paragliding, you've got such height that you don't have much visual reference to the ground like you do when you're flying with a low proximity with a Parakite. So people are low to the ground, they're going downwind, they're going very fast over the ground, so their brain is telling them they must have power in the wing because they're going so fast. Their brain is telling them they're nowhere near a stall point. They've got plenty of power because they're flying over the ground. Now, if you're trying to fly with some proximity and you're going downwind, you might find yourself in a position where actually you haven't got much power in the wing and your hands are subconsciously creeping down. And you might not notice this, your hands will be creeping down, because as a paraglider, you're used to when you need to climb, bringing your hands down a little bit. Your hands are starting to creep down, but you're still screaming over the floor, thinking, I've got plenty of power. Now you'll find yourself in a position where your hands could be so low, although you've got a lot of ground speed, because you're going with the wind over the ground, you've now got no air speed. If you took away the downwind speed, your wing would not be moving fast enough forwards to keep itself flying, essentially. So you end up very close to stall. Obviously, you can stall, or you can try and start inputting a turn, and you can spin at that point. So these are these are your real concerns. You can end up with a wing that has next to no manoeuvrability because you'll either stall or spin it. You can be going very fast in low proximity to the ground. The obvious solution here is to just try and be really conscious of where your hands are, especially on a downwind leg. Don't allow your hands to creep down. Be conscious of where your hands are and how much power your wing actually has. If you do find yourself in the position where you'd realise my hands are too low, I've hardly got anything left in the wing, and I'm screaming downwind, you need to try and, if possible, get pointing back into wind. Now, if you put in a big input, you might, as I say, spin the wing, you might stall the wing. So first of all, try with weight shift. And if you've got space, try with weight shift. And as you weight shift away from the hill and you get a little bit more distance from the ground, hopefully you can start easing your hands up and giving power back to the wing. Point yourself into wind, have your hand, give enough power back to the wind so you can flare, and then put yourself in with a nice gentle flare and hopefully have a nice safe landing. But be really careful of allowing your hands to slip down, because if they end up low down, I've seen people spin and I've seen people stall, And I've seen people just not realise what's going on, keeping going, and then just bang it. They get to a point where they try and give it a bit more break, and they just pile into the ground with a downwind leg. Okay. So yeah, they're the 3 golden rules. As I say, they're obviously not the only routes to injury, but for me, I think they're likely to be. They're 3 very avoidable, easily understandable points that I think going forward potentially save a lot of injury. So there's obvious other ones like inland. You're going to need to think about the dynamic air and the thermal activity. If you're a bit more high performance, we believe you are, and you're flying coastal sites in stronger winds, there's a saying, where there's wind, there's wave. So people fly thinking it's laminar air because they're from the paragliding background, but laminar air with a 10 mile an hour sea breeze is one thing. When you're flying in 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, the waves of the sea will have an impact. That is going to produce wind wave and turbulence. So consider the state of the sea, consider the strength of the winds, and the other obvious one is overconfidence. The wings we're flying are absolutely fantastic, but they can give people a false sense of confidence in their skills. Just consider how much flying you really do and where your skill set really is at, because it's very easy to sling these things around and feel like you're a Superman, but very few of us are. I'm not. And we're best off just taking a step back and making sure that the majority of this time we're flying well within our realm of skill and we're not pushing the envelope too hard. Stay safe out there, guys, and yeah, enjoy your flying.